Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the updated Lethal Mirage build. Now, it got nerfed a bit when they put a cap on the amount of bleed stacks the more damage multiplier could have, so you max out at 60% more damage instead of it being unlimited. However, since that update, we've messed around with it. We changed out one of the skills, changed some of the skill trees around, changed some of the items that you're wearing and what's on them. So you will be less tanky, but you will do about half as much damage as you could before. So instead of a 10 million damage build, you can now do about 5 million damage. So it is still super worthy of one-shotting bosses, except for the Emperor. I could only get the Emperor down to about 75% of his life missing in one hit. So you will have to fight the Emperor a little bit, but all the other bosses, you can annihilate them before they phase out. They die in about 2 seconds, and it's still extremely fun if you're wanting to still play the Lethal Mirage build just to be able to do that. And it's not just great for bosses, it's also great if you do monos and get to the boss at the end. You could just one-shot them at the end and get out, so you can speed run through. But we're using Dancing Strikes now instead of Flurry. Before we were using Flurry to apply a bunch of bleed because we would get more damage per stack of bleed, so we were trying to get as many hits with bleed as possible. But now that that's capped, we're using Dancing Strikes, and Dancing Strikes gives you more damage for every time that you've danced recently with Synchronized Strike and with Lethal Mirage. It gives you more damage for being in the arena, and it gives you more damage for every stack of rhythm. So you're getting 3 different sources of more damage out of Dancing Strikes, so it made sense definitely to go with that. So let's go ahead and get into the skills. For skills, we're running Synchronized Strike, Shift, Dancing Strikes, Smoke Bomb, and Lethal Mirage. For Synchronized Strike, all you need from this is it to create 4 shadows. So after that, you can do whatever that you want with it. So we went a little more defensive with this than we usually do. We put 3 points in Dynamics to make it very cheap, 5 points in Art of the Blade to give us 25% more attack speed for 3 seconds after we use it, 1 point in Growing Darkness to increase its area, 5 points in Foreshadowing for the increased shadow damage, and 1 point in Dark Alleys. Again, this is the only node that you need. This is so that you can get 4 shadows when you use the skill, 2 points in Razor Strikes for some bleed chance, 3 points in Crimson Storm to give yourself 3 stacks of Crimson Shroud when you use it. For Shift, Shift is only being used as a movement skill. It's not giving you anything else for this build for the Lethal Mirage damage, but it's very nice to have because it helps you get out of trouble if you're about to die. It increases the damage when you're just using Dancing Strikes to level up, and it gives you a lot of dodge. Plus, you're invincible while you do it, and it gives you haste so that you can move through monos and such really quickly. We have 4 points in Velocity, 5 points in Head Trauma, 3 points in Rascula's Hesitation, 3 points in Momentum, 3 points in Swift Recovery, 1 point in Shadow Slip, and 1 point in Elusive. For Dancing Strikes, this is the skill that we're using instead of Flurry like we did in the last build. With Dancing Strikes, you get so many damage multipliers that this just seemed way better to use than the last setup we had, even when it wasn't nerfed. However, since you have a cap on bleed and we're no longer worried about applying as much bleed as possible, we needed as many more modifiers to the multiplicative damage so that we could do as much damage as possible. And there's 3 sources of it that you can get for Lethal Mirage inside of this skill tree. So for starters, we put 2 points in Broad Dancing, 1 point in Cutting Corners, and 3 points in Rhythm, so that every time that you use Dancing Strikes, you get a stack of rhythm for 2 seconds. Getting another stack refreshes the duration of all stacks, and here we can get up to 6 stacks. Now that'll give us 30% more global damage, which is multiplicative with all other damage. Now that's global damage, which means your character sheet is going to be increased by 30% more than what you have. So if you have 100% damage, you're now going to have 133% damage. If you have 300% damage, you now have 400% damage. It's multiplicative of what you have for global damage in your character sheet. We have 1 point in Eluding Steps, 2 points in Tenacious Vital, and 4 points in Resolute Technique. And what this does is it allows you to get 40% more multiplicative damage with Lethal Mirage for every dance that you've done before you use Lethal Mirage. Now, normally the way we played this in the last build was you would use Synchronized Strike, get your shadows, and then you'd use Lethal Mirage after you've already put in all the bleed stacks on the enemy. You'd use them back to back. Unfortunately, you can't do that because if you use Synchronized Strike first, that uses all of your recent dances, and then Lethal Mirage doesn't do any extra damage. So what you have to do is use Synchronized Strike, then dance, and before the shadows disappear, then use Lethal Mirage. And that's how you get a maximum amount of damage out of it. We have 1 point in Nimble, 2 points in Underdog, and 4 points in Graceful Arena, so that when you're in the arena, you get 40% more multiplicative damage. Again, this is going to take all of the damages that you have in your character sheet, and it's going to raise them up by another 40% multiplicatively. So just to show you what that really means, if I go to my character sheet and I show you that I have 425% damage, and I dance, I got to hit an enemy to get a stack of Rhythm. If I get a stack of Rhythm, you see how it jumps up a bunch. And then if I get the arena, you can see that it just skyrockets way up into the 700s. It's absolutely crazy how much you can get. Alright, 4. Smoke Bomb. We have 5 points in Lingering Fumes, 5 points in Smoke Blades, and 4 points in Umbral Assault. We still want the shadows. We also want to be in the Smoke Bomb when we do the attack because you get 50% more melee damage, which just helps you out, and 1 point in Blood Bandit for that leech. 1 point in Shrouded in Darkness so that you get Dust Shrouds, and 4 points in Rapid Concealment so that you get more of them. This is definitely going to help with your survivability as it gives you both Dodge and Glancing Blow. For Lethal Mirage, we have 4 points in Majaken Blade for that 32 added physical damage for each sword or dagger that you're wearing, and it's per basis, so since we have one of each, we are getting 64 from that. 2 points in Ravaging Mirage for some more multiplicative damage, 1 point in Shadow Eater, so that you get an additional Mirage, basically an additional hit per shadow consumed. That's why you want to have as many shadows as possible. 4 points in Umbral Feast so that you get 40% more multiplicative damage per shadow that was consumed. Another reason that you want as many shadows as possible. 1 point in Consuming Darkness, 2 points in Unending Mirage so that you have 2 additional Mirages, 2 points in Weeping Cuts for some bleed chance, 2 points in Sundering Blows. This is what got capped in 8C patch, and what this does is it means that you can no longer get an unlimited amount of more damage from bleed stacks. You are actually capped down at 60%. That's why we needed more modifiers from other things and why we chose Dancing Strikes instead of Flurry. And 2 points in Rive, which gives you more crit chance against the enemy you're attacking that has bleed stacks on it per bleed stack. And since this doesn't have a cap, this basically guarantees that if you put enough bleed on there, you're always going to crit that enemy. For passives, we have 25 points in the base row class, with 8 points in Swift Assassin, 8 points in Steady Hand, 1 point in Twin Blade, 3 points in Lethal Cadence, and 5 points in Disembowel. We are no longer in Sapping Strikes or the more damage in Coated Blades because we don't have a 0 mana costing skill. Dancing Strikes cost 3 mana by default, and so we would run out of mana way too fast by trying to use those. For Marksman, we have 2 points, both of them in Focus Fire for the decks. And then 72 points in our Mastered Bladedancer with 8 points in Cloak of Shadows, 8 points in Pursuit, 5 points in Flow, 8 points in Once, 1 point in Rhythm, 5 points in Tempo, 1 point in Pulse, 1 point in Flash of Steel, 10 points in Weapons of Choice for that critical multiplier with a sword and dagger, 5 points in Blood Dance, 6 points in Asuvon's Pack, 1 point in Perfection, 1 point in Confidence, 5 points in Exuberation, 1 point in Shadow Master, 1 point in Critical Eye, and 5 points in All In. For items, the idols that you want is Chance to Bleed on hit with increased damage while wielding a dagger or % increased damage while wielding a sword. Both of those will be good. You want as much increased damage as possible because the more modifiers from all the Dancing Strike things like Arena and Rhythm are going to increase that damage even more. We are wearing one unique this time. We're wearing the Morning Frost so that we can get 1 additional flat cold damage to our attack per point of dex, and since we're stacking dex anyway, it made sense. We have 72 dex on this build, so we get 72 more flat cold damage, which is a ton of flat. That's almost as much as like a two-handed weapon of flat damage comes with it, so that's a huge amount of damage, and that's why we're doing a lot of damage still. You do take 72% more increased damage because of that amount of dex. So if you find your survivability being a problem, just go ahead and take these off. It'll reduce your damage by a bit, but put on a pair of crafted boots that'll help your defense. We're wearing a Decicide sword with added melee physical damage, critical strike multiplier, chance to bleed, and chance to shred armor on hit. Same stats are on the Majesta dagger. For our chest, we have Vite, Dex, bleed chance per equipped sword, and increased damage while wielding a sword. For the helm, we have Dex, increased cooldown recovery speed, increased damage while wielding a sword, and increased health. For our amulet, we have critical strike multiplier, physical penetration, health, and dodge. For our rings, we have both silver rings with Dex, critical strike chance, health, and dodge rating. That is on both of them. For our belt, we have a bronze belt with set fizz, set necrotic, flat health, and hybrid health. For the gloves, we have Dex fight, flat health, hybrid health. For the relic, we have critical strike multiplier, Dex health, and elemental resist. For our character sheet, you can see that we're not really running any resistance. We have very low armor. Our dodge is sitting a little low right now because we're not doing anything, but you can see our damage is quite high in the stacks that we need, 400 to 500, and we have 800% crit multi. Now remember that when you use smoke bomb and you start getting that dodge and glancing blow, your dodge is going to be over 50% at all times while you're in it, and then when you shift, you're automatically over 70% for a little bit. Dancing strikes also will give you a little bit of dodge. As long as you're dancing strike recently, you're going to have 45 to 46%, and that'll increase as you have smoke bomb and as you're shifting, and then as well while you're in the arena you'll take 20% less damage, so that counteracts the damage that you take by the Morning Frost a little bit. Alright, for the skill rotation and how to play this build, I like to put Smoke Bomb on autocast, just so I don't have to worry about it, and then it's always making shadows for me. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use Synchronized Strike to get more shadows. It's going to put you over your maximum, and then those shadows last for 5 seconds. So before they disappear, you want to get in as many dances as possible, and then you want to use Lethal Mirage. So you'll go ahead and do that. You'll dance as much as possible, trying to hit the target, and then you'll use your good old strike, and you'll see that we hit for a bunch of damage. I didn't time it perfect, but you can get up to 400, 500k crits is how high that I've been getting with it. So you want to make sure that you throw down your thing, dance as much as you can, which again lagged a little bit there, and then make sure you hit with it, and you're going to do just tons of damage. It does come down to having the perfect rotation of skills to really focus on it, and that's how you'll do the maximum amount of damage. You do want to make sure that when you're attacking the bosses, most of them you'll kill rather easily, but if it's a close call, make sure that you're in both the arena and in the smoke bomb before you use Lethal Mirage. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some more gameplay.